Okay, I'm going to go through some variations and traps around the Ruy Lopez. It's I see the women's world champion Alexandra Kostyniuk. I see her play quite often, and in the recent game in 2008 between Topalov and Kamsky, I think Topalov played quite a good game as well with it. So I'm going to go through Topalov's game, which featured one of the best moves of the entire match, according to Chess Magazine. I'll go through that, and I'll go through the Mortimer trap, the fishing pole, and just a lot of the variations around it. So it starts off with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. So this square here is the square that needs to be attacked to start off the Ruy Lopez, which is bishop b5. Now if white goes on ahead and castles, black's earlier move, knight df6, has set up what's known as the Berlin defense. Now g4 is what's known as the fishing pole, which can actually lead to mate with the following variation: h3, h5. Now if white thinks to himself, there's a free piece sitting there, I could take it, h takes g4, h takes g4, knight e1, queen h4, f3 just to give his king an escape square, followed by g3 by black to close that square off, and then knight c3, queen h2 mate. So there's that variation, but there's also, if we go back a couple of moves, say that white doesn't castle, and instead of playing 4 castle, white plays 4d3. Now black can play the Mortimer trap here, which gains a piece, and the line goes as follows: knight to e7, which looks a little bit strange as a move, but it gives white the opportunity to come and take this piece. Now if he does fall for the trap and takes that piece of material, then the following variation can carry on out. So it'll be the line continues, knight takes e5, then c6, bishop a4, and then you've got the queen a5 with the check here, winning either this piece or that piece. Generally white will play bishop d2, which is met by queen takes e5. Now there is a couple of different move orders here that let's just go back a little bit. Say that rather than 6a4 we could have 6c4, so rather than falling back to here we have 6c4. Black still has queen a5 and still wins the knight on e5. Now after 6c4 and 6a4 you can also have knight to c4 as the response. Now black can't just go on ahead and take the bishop here, although it seems as if he can, because that would be a mistake, because you can see here black's king is locked in behind all of these pieces, and therefore white can deliver a smothered mate on this square here. So the next move to that sequence of events is to give black's king an escape square, which is d6, which is then generally the only move left is bishop to a4 and then b5, and sure enough again then black's going to win one of the two pieces. So that's some of the opening play in the Ruy Lopez. I'm going to move on to a move between a game between Kamsky, rated 2725, and Topalov, which is a slightly different variation called the Zaitsev Variation, which was popularized by Karpov. So it starts off with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, b5, and then a6, bishop a4 rather than the exchange variation, knight f6, castles, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castles, h3, and then b7. Now, Zaitsev variation, as I've said, was popularized by Karpov, and its idea is to put pressure on the e4 square, and this therefore delays the white's knight from commencing its journey from d2 to f1 to g3 to f5. The game continues with d4, rook e8, bishop on b to d2, bishop f8, knight g5, rook e7, d5, knight to b8, knight to f1, knight on b to d7, knight g3, g6, bishop c2, h6, knight f3, knight to b6, and h4. Now, pair h4 is to be fairly advanced, h4, h5, which in the end gives black the choice of h takes g6, damaging the pawn structure on the king side, or the horrible g6, g5, leaving the f5 square a little bit awkward here, and weakens these white squares. Black's hope really rests on the timely c7, c6, and in the meantime he's hindered at least a2, a4, and can meet bishop e3 with knight to c4. The game continues again with queen to d7, knight to h2, g7, h5, rook to f8, knight on h to f1, c6, d takes c6, queen takes c6, and knight to e3. Now, knight to c3, knight on c3 to d5, an exchange in that square would make g6 vulnerable to the bishop on c2, and this is actually a Lopez theme in the middle game. The same weakness really discourages d6, d5. We continue then with king to h7, queen f3, bishop c8, rook d1, bishop e6, and b3. Now this was perhaps one of the best moves of the entire match according to chess, and I see it for what it is. It is a good move, and it prepares the siege of the d6 square with bishop a3 and rook d2, whilst offering a pawn for excellent long-term compensation. Because b2, b3 also limits the knight on b6 from coming to either of these two squares. So the game continues. Queen takes c3, bishop d2, queen c7, a5, queen b8, and rook d2. And you can see at the cost of a pawn, Kamsky has freed the remaining pieces and exerted some pressure on d6, d5. So the game continued as I'll let you carry on. So in my studies I've been trying to take an opening and learn as many of the lines as possible to understand good opening strategy, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. There's a lot more lines, a lot more variations, and if anybody has any other Ruy Lopez lines that they'd like to talk about, then please leave a response. Thank you.